You're on. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the November PDP, Professional Development. We have some presenters today that are going to focus on some information that hopefully will help you out in some way. So thanks for tuning in. First will be the coach. Coach, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
All right. And whoop, and he's out and he's back in. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. And thanks for being patient with the process here. It would be ideal if we were all together, but this is what we have to work with and we'll make the best of it. So today's my part of it is basically a healthy look at your future and just talking about the different areas, just to kind of open up some thoughts on what that looks like, to kind of get the crystal ball out and take a look at what the future looks like for you physically, nutritionally, mentally, and maybe from that generate some goals for yourselves, and that could help keep you successful through the years, whether you're just starting or about ready to finish, moving into retirement, or in the middle of your career. It's always good to reevaluate and see where you're at. So without any further ado, here we'll get started. Okay. There we go. We have a short video for you. This was sent to me the other day, and I decided to put it in because it's just kind of fun to watch, and it's amazing to see, number one, the age, the range of motion, the ability to move one's body. You know, we're all born like this, and it's pretty fun to see this little guy get after it. And so just it's a 2-minute video, and just have fun watching it. So, and obviously the baby gets all the way up to the top and walks off, and but we want to cut it short because it gets into a guy starts talking, it gets a little obnoxious, but kind of fun to watch the range of motion. And the funny thing about it is in the academy, what I asked for is for everybody in the academy, all the new recruits, look, you just got to do one pull-up. You know, it's obviously it's ideal if they can do 10, and we work towards that, but it's a minimum that you'd be able to do one, and really maybe one weighted pull-up just so you get yourself out of a situation. This kind of proves that, you know, we're all born with this sort of strength, relative strength, being able to handle our own bodies. And this is one of the things we like to teach, and, you know, put it out there, especially before they come into the academy. And that's the type of range of motion you'd like to try to keep the rest of your life. But pretty fun video to watch. And I'm sure there's some folks out there wanting to probably call CPS on the parents for allowing their kid to do that, but I think it's absolutely fantastic. Okay, so the three components of good health, basically physical health, nutritional health, and emotional health. We're going to break down each one real quickly, go over them, a little overview, and then kind of what to do about them, what that looks like. You're probably already doing some of these things, but it's good to kind of review. And if there's any questions at all during this time, you can call 916-616-2491. That's 916-616-2491 with your questions at any time. And we'll get to those. So physical health, how does the body function? First off, before we get started, before we get into how it functions, I think it's important to note that there's a finite amount of work that your body can physically do before it breaks. And it's important to understand this because I think there might be some sort of thought process that we can get through our lives and maybe a 25-year career, not just in the fire service, but in other professions as well, even in a day job or a tech job where you might be at a desk, because that does its damage as well, to where at the end of that career or moving into your 40s and 50s, that there's a thought process that you can avoid pain in the body. Well, it's just, my experience, it's just not true, because there's a finite amount of work that your body can handle before it breaks. And there's sayings by folks that lift lots of weight. They say, if you lift heavy weight, you're going to hurt, you're going to get broken. And those that do, they know what I'm talking about. And it's the nagging shoulder, low back. If you're an athlete, you usually walk away with some sort of a limp, that you have to work on for the rest of your life. And they can be changed and they can be healed and corrected. Most people tolerate it, and most people suffer through those painful injuries, and not knowing that they could be fixed or reversed. But you're going to have pain, and you have to work on it and get it better, and then you'll get it again. And it's very common. So because there's a finite amount of lifts you can do. There's a finite, and they found this scientifically, there's a finite amount of movements let's say an overhead press or a deadlift pattern, a squat pattern, a lunge pattern. There's only so many times you can do that, a throwing pattern, and then something's going to break. It's just like your car. It can only last for so long, whether it's 100,000 miles or 1,000,000 miles, something's going to break eventually. So, just be ready for that. I guess I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but just know when these things pop up, that's normal. And then it's your job to root out how to take care of it. But moving back to how the body functions, it's a mobility stability model. And if you look at it from the feet up, those of you that were in the academy with me, I went over this like day one, because it's really important to understand what these joints do. Because if you took any classes in college, they probably didn't teach it this way. They just looked at the movement of the joint and where the origin and insertion of the muscle was, and the innervation and all that stuff, and you memorized all that stuff and then moved on. But really, when the body is standing and it's reacting to gravity, developing power, it's really important to understand what each joint does. And so at the ankle is a mobility joint, and it's like the first thing that hits the ground, obviously, and it senses the ground and it sends messages up to the hip. And so it has to move, it has to rotate, it has to balance itself out, kind of like those feet that move around on the bottom of a ladder. When you set it on uneven ground, it'll set itself to a point to be stable. The ankle works the same way, and then it loads and it goes up through the knee. And most people will tell you that the knee is a mobility joint, meaning it moves a lot, and it does when it's off the ground. But when power is produced and the foot's on the ground, the knee is actually a stability joint, and it moves very little because it has to transfer and allow the muscles that are attached to it and also attached to the hip to move. Now we get into the big boy, and that's the hip. And the hip is the glutes and the hip flexors and all the other muscles that attach to it. But those two, the glutes and hip flexors, is the power source for movement, and they have to be mobile. I can't say it enough. If I were to work on just one muscle in the body to get rid of a lot of pain in the bodies I've seen over the years, it'd be the hips. And when I was in therapy, everything we started with, they'd come in with the shoulder, I'd stretch the hips. They come in with a knee, stretch the hips. And there's always something happening there, whether it's a hip flexibility issue or a glute inhibition issue where we've sat too much and the glutes actually shut off. This causes a world of problems, and we'll talk about that later with the chair. So the hip is a mobility joint. The low back, and that's the L5 through L1, is a stability joint, meaning that they all act as one. Yes, they can unhook, they can unlock, so we can get around and get under, duck under limbs or get out of tight spots. But when it comes time to be powerful, that means lifting patients, pulling hose, all those things, putting our bags in the overhead container, all those things, the activities of daily life. When that happens, then the low back becomes a stability joint. Through a tight core, they stabilize and help transfer that power from the lower body to the upper body. And then you get into the ribs, which have to be mobile. When was the last time somebody told you your rib cage is tight? You don't really hear that very much, but yet it's very common. You see it on the golf course all the time with guys that can't swing a club, even though they're very powerful. They don't have the follow through because they don't have the rib flexibility. And again, that comes from the hips. Then you move up into the shoulder. The shoulder blade is a stability joint. The shoulder itself is a mobility joint, elbow stability, wrist mobility. But you see what happens. It goes mobile, stable, all the way from the toes all the way up out to the fingers. So it's pretty fascinating to look at it that way. But here's the point with that. When you shut any of those down, then the others will change. And this is what's very common in the fire service, is that we've shut our hips down. We've not only done it on the fire ground, or in the stations, but we've also done it on the day staff. And I'm doing it right now. I'm sitting in this chair. And so what happens is my hips get shut down. And so when I get up, and you've all been there, you stand up and your hips are tight and you kind of have to stretch out a bit. Well, those glutes are not working. And usually what we do, we jump right into the weight room, or we jump on a call, or we go for a run. And then all of a sudden our knee starts to hurt and the low back starts to hurt. And we didn't pay attention to those hips. That's very, very common. And so just something to pay attention to. Because usually a lot of those chronic things, and when I mean chronic, I'm talking about any injury any pain you have in your body that was not from an acute injury over the last, let's say 6 weeks, there's something else going on. The problem is not where you're feeling the pain. It's almost always from somewhere else. So just, something to think about. So when your shoulder starts to hurt for some reason, and you didn't, like, let's say, have twisted, and you didn't fall in a pothole and twist your knee, those are acute injuries. If it just starts hurting for no reason, take a look at the hips, take a look around at other parts of the body. Usually it's something else that's not working. The other thing is relative strength, your ability to do your activities of daily living with your size and your weight, and being strong enough to move your own body and then some. It all depends on what you do for a living. If you move heavy things, then you have to have high relative strength. If not, then, but there is a certain amount of strength that we all need, a certain amount of fitness. And that's really dependent on what you do every day. If you choose to be sedentary, then you probably don't need a lot, but that's up to you. If you're in a lot of pain and you're having a lot of dysfunction, then that would be something usually got to get a little stronger. Flexibility, none of these work by themselves. They all work in conjunction with each other. Being flexible is great, having range of motion, but without a stability, then you have hyper flexibility, and that can be trouble. I rarely see that. I've rarely seen that in athletics and in the fire service, but every now and then you get somebody that is hyper mobile, and they need to actually work on their strength and their stability, so those joints don't go too far and get broken. Mobility really is the key. Mobility is like a connection, or it's a combination of stability and flexibility. You put those two together, and all those joints that we were talking about are working together. Now you're mobile. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you see the baby lifting the phony weights. But the key reason why I put this one up there was obviously she's under the age of 2, maybe about 1. Who knows? I can't really tell. But definitely not old enough to understand coaching and what the parts of the body are and how to move their own body. But that baby just got into that position with no issues at all, because it's natural. It's a natural movement pattern that, as you can see from the other picture, that's somewhere in Southeast Asia. And I've spent time in Cambodia and Vietnam, and they'll sit at the markets like that all day long doing work. It's not a problem for us. If I got down in that position right now, I'd need a couple guys to come help me get out of it because I'm so tight. And that's really something we all should be able to do. And the reason why I put that up there as well is that there's no excuse. I'm too old. I used to be that way. I'm not anymore. Those are just excuses. We could all get that back one day. We just have to change a lot of things we do every day. The last one is work capacity, and just looking at what you do for a living, and can you do it over an extended period of time? You know, the time on the fire ground, which is such a unique environment, that you know, you're in something that's holding your body heat in, you're working hard, you're on air. That's, you know, what sort of work capacity do you have to do that? And you got to train for that. And a lot of it just has to do with actually getting into that equipment and doing work. And you know, there's only so much you can do in the weight room, but that definitely helps working on your stability and your strength. And then also getting on the training ground and continuing to train in that environment is really where it's at. But having the cardio and having the strength to get through some of these fireground activities is something that should be a part of your goals as well. And I think you all know that. So nutritional health, there's a lot here. Basically, you know, we are the third largest, arguably second largest country in the world. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And you can just drive down the street, drive down Sunrise and see what's popular. And it usually all the drive-throughs have about 6 or 7 to 10 cars deep of people just, you know, coming in because it's convenient. COVID has helped. It'll be interesting to see what happens to our population after COVID. Due to the fact that folks have such easy access and excuses to go through the drive-through. Well, I don't want to be in contact with other people. Well, you know, unfortunately, Sprouts and Whole Foods and those places don't have drive-throughs. It'd be nice if they did have prepared meals, but just much easier. And also the food is just a lot tastier, and we all know that. And so it makes it's no surprise, and it's been around forever, and it's definitely showing itself, especially in the last 20, 30 years, what's happened to the size of our country because of a couple of things. Number one, we demonized fat, and we quietly put sugar into everything to keep the flavor up, and that was a killer. And we're still reeling from that. And another thing that's popped up that there's something I'm learning more about is this overfat syndrome. And it's not, overfat is not to be confused with being obese. Obese is one thing. Overfat is actually can be in obesity, but also can be in normal folks that are walking around with more fat around their organs, more fat around the midsection, but they still might be fine in the arms and legs, but they're carrying this. It's almost it's a deadly fat actually, and it creates situations that can be linked to cancer, linked to cardiovascular disease, all those things, because of the food we're eating and because of how we're living life and how more and more sedentary we're slowly becoming. With the type of food that we're eating is creating this environment, and they're also finding links to being overfat and COVID numbers and your ability to fight it off and or being predisposed to catching and having detrimental effects from COVID from this. And some folks say it's been a long time coming. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm reading more about it and researching that. We are dominated by junk food. It's very hard to get away from. If you go down any aisle in any grocery store, you're going to be around it. The ability to read labels and to look for those hidden things, the salts, the synthetic salts, the synthetic vitamins, the synthetic sugars, the high fructose corn syrup, which really is another word for poison. Okay, you got to avoid fructose as much as possible, and shop the edges of the grocery stores, and then understanding that this whole thing that fat is bad and sugar. You know, hey, I'll burn it off later. That's just not a that it's unfortunately it's the other way around. Fat is very good for you, right? Fat is very good for you. We get fat from sugar. We don't get fat from eating fat. Okay, we eat a lot of fat, then we eat a lot of calories, and that's one thing. But fat does not cause fat in our bodies. Sugar causes fat in our bodies, and that's something that still, it's a paradigm shift that's still out there, that's still happening. But if I have to stand here and say get all sugar out of your diet, I'm going to do it, and it's almost impossible to do. But I think if we get eyes on it and say, okay, we got to be in moderation in these areas. Instead of a full donut, have a half a donut. I'm not not here promoting any to change any of that, but just know that that's what's going in your body. And usually down the road, an hour later, you've all been there, man, it was tasty, but you paid for it later. That's usually how it goes. Either you eat the not so tasty foods now and feel good later, or you eat the really tasty foods now and you feel bad later. That's usually the case. And so just, something to get eyes on, but just know that your nutritional health over time, these things add up. The Red Bulls and the Monsters and the Bangs, you're getting a lot of energy out of those things right now, but maybe you're not paying attention to the fact that you're wrecked at the end of the day because it just destroyed your adrenal glands, and now you're having issues with inflammation that we're going to talk about later. So the third part is emotional health, and this is big. This could be multiple PDPs, but I'm just going to touch over things and how they kind of relate to the body. How to fix them. There's all sorts of things available, and we'll be talking about those later on in the PDP with other presenters. I'll just address it from the health and wellness side. Stress is the number one killer. Stress is a big problem, and here in the United States, I think we actually promote it. How hard can we work? How much can we get done? I'm living a busy life. It's almost rewarding to tell your neighbors and friends, man, I'm so busy, because, hey man, this guy's doing something. He's successful if he's busy, or, if you told him, yeah, man, I only worked 4 hours a day and I slept for 4 hours, you're a loser, but that's a less stressful environment. So we're kind of pushed with this social, thought process that if you're not stressed and working your tail off, that you're a failure. And that's just not the case. And that stress catches up with all of us. And we usually find ways quietly to handle it that could be detrimental. But that low level fight or flight, okay, is really interesting because as human beings and really in the animal kingdom, we're very unique in that we have memories. We have a brain that's extremely active and holds on to a lot of things, especially the pains and the failures, the shame and the guilt that come with life, that come with failures that have happened with all of us. We've done great things, and we've made good decisions, we've made bad decisions, and we usually harbor on the bad decisions we've made and the worries of the people around us in the future, how my kids are going to turn out, my husband, my wife, my career, all these things play into, they're in our brain and we spend a lot of time on them. It's what keeps us up at night. But the difference between us and let's say a cheetah, that, if you think about these animals out there, they live day to day. They got to go catch their meal almost on a daily basis. You don't see cheetahs out there smoking cigarettes and worrying and shaking. They basically get up, they see a gazelle, they go after it, they go hard for 30 seconds. They either catch a meal or they don't. And if they don't catch it, they jog it back and sit down, recover, get themselves under control again, collect everything, and then get up and go do it again. And if they catch a meal, they do the same thing. They drop it, kill it, drop it, recover, have a meal, then get up and do the same thing again the next day. And that's just how they work. There's a book out called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, and that's for that very reason. They don't carry that memory, and they don't carry those fears and so it's pretty fascinating to think about. Yet we spend so much time as human beings. We spend them in two areas, and we spend them in the past, in depression about what we've done in the past, and then in the future with anxiety, worrying about how things are going to turn out. And very rarely do we spend time in the right here and now. And that's always a battle, and it's just a human condition. And that the areas that we usually spend it in family relationships, career, and then certain things the situations that come up, politics, COVID, war, whatever those things are in the news. And the news does a phenomenal job of keeping us in fear. That they make lots of money on it. And it's something that really, if I could get everybody to stop watching the news, I think we probably have a change in heart rates and a change in stress levels and family life and all that. But It's hard to do. It's hard to do when it's all over with social media. But these are things you got to look at and go, maybe I need to unhook a little bit so I can just calm myself down, because that's the key, is finding the calm and getting rid of this low level fight or flight. I don't know about you, but after I watch CNN, my stress, cortisol, adrenaline levels go up a little bit, and that's not good for us. So, maybe there's something to be done there. On the second half of this, I wrote this yesterday. I went over this yesterday. Life is meant to be painful, and really, I wanted to change that because here we're talking about decreasing pain, and yet I'm saying, oh, it's meant to be painful. I want to change that to life is meant to be uncomfortable, and in the uncomfortableness of life is where we grow, and we spend a lot of time trying to avoid it. And I don't know for those of you older folks, back in the day, they used to have electrodes you could put on your abs, and you'd spend $29.99 and get a free set of Ginsu knives with 3 easy payments to get the abs like the guy on the infomercial. And then if you read the fine print, it said, good diet and exercise is also the thing you have to do, but that it was so small you could barely read it. And they make their money, then they leave, fly by night, because people realize it doesn't work. But there's a difference between pain and being uncomfortable, right? It's like when you stretch. You don't want to stretch to a point where it's painful and you're dying. It should be mildly uncomfortable, and that's a good thing. Joint pain in anything is a bad thing. Muscle pain from fatigue at a certain level, with what you're trying to do with your fitness, that's a good thing. So I wanted to change that to life is meant to be uncomfortable, but not only physically in the weight room, but also mentally, like making challenges to change yourself, like in your relationships, doing different things in your relationships to better them. Usually has to do with sacrifice in your relationships, sacrificing for your kids, sacrificing for your loved ones, and doing things for them that you may not want to do, like keeping your mouth quiet when you know you're right. That's one of the hardest things you could learn to do in a relationship. Nutritionally uncomfortable, instead of, oh, I'm so hungry, I want to just squeeze into In-N-Out and grab me something, but no, I'm going to go home. I'm going to make a salad. I got some fresh chicken and some, a nice vinaigrette that's made with real olive oil and all that stuff, and I'm going to eat right. And sometimes that can be uncomfortable because you have to suffer till you get home, or you just could taste that fantastic taco at Taco Bell, and you have to go have that kale salad. These things can be uncomfortable, but we know through physical uncomfortableness of workouts, mental, doing the right thing, and avoiding your selfishness, nutritionally eating right. We know that all three of those, when they do them right, we definitely feel better later, and it really pays off. But it can be hard to do, but it's meant to be that way. There's a saying, I've always said, either you pay now or you pay later. You pay now. If you pay now and eat the right thing, then you feel better later. If you don't do the right thing now, you pay later. Meaning if your nutrition's bad and you're not doing these certain things, you're drinking too much or smoking cigarettes, whatever it is, usually down the road you pay later. But either way, we're going to pay, and we got to put that effort in, and suffer in some way, shape, or form for a certain amount of time. So that the uncomfortableness is guaranteed, but accepting the suffering is not. So when these things happen, let's say we've got some of these injuries, or we haven't taken care of our body enough, and then these things start to pop up. I can't do the things I used to do. I can't run like I used to. I can't, bend over and play with my kids because of this. Now it becomes suffering. And this is where we can help. This is where, it's time to take action. And so there's lots of things out there. What are you suffering from? Is it a low back issue? Well, let's take a look at that. Let's see what we can do there. And we'll go over those later. If it's a nutritional issue, I'm having trouble pushing away from the table. Well, it's time to get some help. I'm having trouble at work with this, or with how I feel about life. There's plenty of people out there, plenty of programs out there. It's just taking those first steps to go do that. And that's the key, is what are you suffering from? And then what sort of steps can you take to get out of the suffering? Because it does take those steps, but there's plenty of people, myself included, and many people around you that are here to help. It's just the ability and the willingness to ask for it and to not feel ashamed and just say, hey man, I'm struggling here, I'm struggling there, and as far as I'm concerned, come on along. We meet every Wednesday, all of us sufferers. And so you're not alone if that's the case. So, what is one of the biggest issues in the fire service that I've seen over the last couple of years is basically dealing with inflammation. Okay, because when we talk about physical health, nutritional health, and mental health, all these trigger an area of the body that systemically causes issues, and it's this low-level fight or flight, which is stress. Okay, stress is the number one killer in the fire service, and also in the police department, and at Intel, and down at Hewlett Packard. It's the number one problem. The stress and the what it does to the system, and how it just hammers your system physically. You got to look at because when we look at stress, we think of, oh, I'm thinking about bad things, or I'm worried about a road rage. I've got road rage or whatever, or some issue in the grocery store because of masks. Yeah, those things are going to happen. And you're going to see them. Yeah, hopefully you're not a part of it, but they're all around us, and it's on the news and that. But there's also things that we can do physically that, in the long run, they have to be paid attention to. Like we talked about earlier, the amount of stress you put on your body when you lift weights. Okay, yes, it's good. Those of you that know me, I spent my whole career in the weight rooms of college, with pros, high school, you name it, and I've seen gazillion lifts of lots of weight, 6, 7, 8, 900-pound squats, and these guys, it's good to watch, and we've always backed that stuff up with proper rest, recovery, nutrition. All those things have got to be in place if you're going to work that hard, because you are definitely creating a lot of inflammation. Okay, and so that inflammation will take a toll on you. I went to a functional medicine doctor because I'm having an issue with my foot, and I said, look, there's something going on here, and I'm not going to believe it's plantar fasciitis. And so he looked at me, did some things, and I got an adrenal test done, and sure enough, my adrenals are off the chart. And he said, look, I hate to tell you this, but you need to stop lifting weight, and you need to stop riding your mountain bike, and no running. And I just want you to walk for an hour every day for the next 63 days. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. But I knew what he was saying though. He's like, I gotta drop this inflammation down because it's killing you, and it's very common. I talk about it because I'm not the only one in the room that has that issue. A lot of these aches and pains that, my foot started hurting for no reason. And I know what's happening is I'm having an issue fighting inflammation because I'm constantly in a low level fight or flight. Okay, so I have to take action. Will I go back to weight training? Sure, down the road. But right now I've got to calm down those adrenal glands, and the one sitting right on top of the kidneys there in the picture. Those puppies right there will wreck your life if you don't take care of them. The other thing is, if physically, is the lack of physical work on the other end of the spectrum is sitting too much. And this is a big problem, not just for the day staff and anybody that sits at a desk, but also in the fire service, medics that are sitting on the ambulance for hours at a time, and you sit on the ambulance, you might do a little bit of work, you sit back in the ambulance, and then you go sit at the table and have something to eat, and then go sit in the recliner, and you have a lot of different environments, but you're doing the same thing. And so that also plays a role, but I have an active job. Yes, you do, but there's still a lot of sitting involved. And it needs to be looked at, and just, okay, what can we do here about it? But just know that the tightness that comes from it, because usually the sitting itself is one thing, but usually we're in front of a computer watching the news, we're on our phone looking at Facebook and reading things that are getting our low level fight or flight up, something that's controversial, something that gets you fired up. Or having a relationship issue on the phone, whatever, those things happen in that seated position. Next thing you get up and you're stiff as a board. And so that's an issue that needs to be looked at. And it's a cause of inflammation. Nutritional, the junk food, already talked about, the sugar, and then alcohol. Alcohol is definitely a poison to the body. We all know that, hence a hangover, and all the other things. But what a lot of people don't realize with alcohol, not only does it cause pain, but it also, it just hammers your metabolic system. And all the way up to 72 hours. For those of you that are looking to lose weight, like the best fitness trainers, you know, the ones on The Biggest Loser and all these world renowned trainers, you talk to all of them offline, they're going to tell you they go into their client's house and the first thing they do, they tear their kitchen apart and they get rid of all alcohol. If you want to look like the models, you got to get rid of the alcohol. Some people, yeah, they have the ability to handle it and they're rare, but the rest of us, it definitely plays a role in smashing your metabolism for up to 72 hours. And that could be trouble. That means if you're drinking on a Friday, Saturday night, then you're not going to get back on track until maybe Tuesday. And so you do the math on, or you do the calendar on that. That doesn't give you very much time. And I'm not here promoting anything, but other than to know that if that's a part of your life and you're looking to make gains and looking to feel better, that might be an area you need to look at and make some changes in. Mental life, the stresses of life, or the mental life stresses, worries and depression, like we talked about. And that's either getting eyes on it, saying, man, that's me. Okay, what can we do about it? Then that's seeking appropriate help if needed. And again, I can't say it enough. Don't be afraid to reach out, because one of the other things that's happening, and we'll talk about here what to do about it. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So with all that, we've gone over those three areas of physical, nutritional, and mental stress. What can we do about it? Here's some basic ideas and tips that you probably already know, but it's just good to kind of talk about them again and maybe get you back on track, or maybe it even stimulates a couple questions. And folks, at any time, I've already gotten a couple emails saying, hey coach, I heard you talk about that. Can we talk more about this and more about that? And that's why I'm here. Open discussion. Love to hear your thoughts on things. And also you as a service, both day staff and line, you're very well educated in these areas. And so I love having discussions about it. And so if there's something that you're thinking about, something you want to share, let's give me an email. Maybe we'll hook up, have a cup of coffee at the station, talk about it more. Good stuff. So physical guidelines. Now, aside from having goals of running a marathon, let's say, or being in a competition, which is good. All I can tell you about those things is make sure you have the rest and recovery. You have your sleep dialed in, you have your nutrition dialed in, and then you can go through the rigors of that sort of training. The demands of your occupation on the fire side, is detrimental. As you well know, it's detrimental to your ability to compete, just because of the fact most of you get hammered on your sleep, and your cycles are off. And so that's as a professional, trying to be a high level athlete, that can get in the way. When I was training athletes, I had many guys that had opportunities to try out at the pro combines that were at the local colleges, and we do training, and I would tell them, okay, you gotta quit everything. You got to quit your job. You got to move in with your mom, move in with your parents, have somebody, take out a loan so you can buy all the food you need, have your own room, where you can sleep and you can rest and recover, because you're going to work out twice a day, and then you're going to go home and rest, and you're going to get up in the morning, eat, go train, stretch, go take a nap, come back, eat, train, rest, stretch some more, then go to bed, and then do it again the next day, and then do that weeks on end, and then get ready for this test or this pro day that you're going to go to. And anybody that came to me that said, hey, I have a job, I'd say, well, good luck with that. Because stand on your feet working at Home Depot and trying to make the team was impossible. And the only reason why I share that with you is that just to know that if you're going to go higher in your intensity in whatever you're looking to do, just really make sure you can recover from it, because it will add up. For those of us that can't do that, then it's real basic, because we have a finite amount of moves in our body, and the intensity also plays a role. It is wise to look at what your goals are. I thought I could try to get a 400-pound squat in my 50s, and that was a foolish move. And so those days are over, because it took me a week to get over it. after the last time I tried last year, and we're not going there again. So that, you know, I had to lighten up on the weights and stay within the demands of what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to stay fit for the activities of daily living, doing the yard work and doing hobbies around my house and making it better and digging post holes and building fences and all that stuff. That's now my occupation aside from what I do here. So I train for that now instead of doing foolish things like thinking I'm that strong at my age. And you know, so lightening up on the weights, stretching, full range of motion activities, you know, looking at what you're doing. You know, is it arm curls or is it grabbing the sandbag from the ground and taking it to the shoulders and up overhead? You know, they both work the biceps. One is a full range of motion that incorporates the whole body, and that's how your body works. You know, both line and day staff, whether you're putting, you know, ladders back on the rig, or you're putting your overhead, you're putting your luggage on the overhead container on the flight home. You know, these are all range of motion activities that we should train for. You know, putting things, you know, putting the bag of dog food up on the shelf, or grabbing something down from the shelf in the garage. You know, these are all things that we can actually train for, and you have to keep that certain amount of strength up, as we all know. You know, being wise. If it doesn't look, smell, and taste like what you're doing on the job and at home, then, you know, reevaluate if it's worth doing. You know, pay attention to your competitive nature. The ego is something, and being competitive is great. I think it does just as much damage as it does good. It will deliver a good workout, and there's nothing wrong with having people pressing you, you know, in the station or at the CrossFit gym, or your buddy at CalFit, you know. But if you're not feeling it, and you don't have the energy, and you haven't had the rest and the nutrition, then there's times when you got to go, you know what, not today, buddy. You know, I'm going to hold off, because I've seen a lot of folks get broken, not just in the fire service, but I had my business inside of a CrossFit for a few years, and boy, it's amazing some of the things I saw with folks that their ego you know, there's their first day there and they're doing a CrossFit workout. They got it on a Groupon, and they don't come back because they could not overcome their ego and just do one set. They had to do all 5 sets like everybody else who've been there for months, and they're done. You know, pretty easy to predict. So watch the ego and tone it back, and live to fight another day is what I say. You know, I'm not making a comeback. So just ease up there, and get out of the chair. Just get out of the chair as much as possible. Know that the more time you spend in it, then you're going to have to spend more time trying to undo what it's done, meaning more time on waking your hips up, more time on flexibility before you jump into that squat workout. Because most of us do not do a proper warm up before we get in. But if we're up moving around all day, then it's a lot easier to get into that workout. But if we've been sitting all day, we just got to pay attention to that and get up and move, because it could set us up for injury. Nutritional guidelines. You know, this is, you know, there's a couple more I wanted to add to this. Is, you know, obviously shopping the edges of the grocery store. You know, you all know that pretty much now. Fruits. I'm even going to throw out that, you know, even fruits need to be, you need to take another look at your fruit. Okay. Just take another look. I'm not going to tell you not to have fruit, but that's been, you know, the doc says, oh yeah, eat your fruits and vegetables. And really it should be eat all of your very dark berries and vegetables. But you know, there's just, if you do your homework on bananas, mangoes, oranges, and all that other stuff. I know vitamin C is good, but there's data out there that says that even the sugar in those fruits are still not very good for you as well. So I walk lightly, because what do you mean I can't have my fruit? My doc said get more fruits and vegetables. You know, so there's a time and a place for that, but some people will overdo it on the fruit, thinking that they're doing good things. Yes, they are getting good vitamins and minerals, but they're also getting a ton of sugar. And so that's something to be looked at. And different fruits offer different types of sugar that some of them have to be avoided. So number one, avoid sugar. I can't say it enough. Do the best you can. I know this is a great message right before the holidays, but you know, the other one I wanted to put on here is moderation. right? Let's be real about it. Are you going to avoid all sugar and say no to everything? If you can, well, good for you. That's good for you. And usually, if folks have really bad issues with it, then they can say that. But for the rest of us, man, it's a matter of, do you want to kind of feel a little bad later? Maybe just one bite, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with giving yourself a little room to enjoy, but throughout the day, and if you look at a full 7 days, 35 meals, let's say you're eating 5 times a day, maybe a couple of those meals could be, like, let's say Thanksgiving dinner with pumpkin pie and all the other fixings, and you get your 4,000 calories in one meal. That's okay as a cheat meal, and you've earned it. You just clean things up for the other 33 meals you have throughout the week, and allow yourself the ability to go do that and have fun, and don't worry about anything. But it's when you make that sort of eating a way of life, that's where things get in trouble. So there's nothing wrong with having a good time every now and then. Just very sparingly. Limit the simple carb intakes, pastas, rice, corn, chips. That's just getting all the carbs out of your diet, and especially those simple carbs like that. They wreak havoc on the body. They create sugar. They get those adrenal glands firing. They feed they feed that insulin production, and now we're in trouble. Okay, so over time, right? And so, because remember, this whole thing is about calming down those adrenals and getting rid of the inflammation, and basically feeling better. And so all these things: sugar, limit caffeine, the Red Bulls, Bangs, and Monsters. I think in the next 20 years, we're going to see studies. We're going to see issues with what these sorts of products are doing to our society. Because back in my day, I didn't start drinking caffeine until I was 25 years old, because I didn't know anything about it. And all it was coffee. There was no Red Bulls or any of that stuff out there. In my day, it was just coffee and iced tea. And even those are okay in moderation. But now we're making these synthetic caffeines and vitamins and minerals and taurine and all these other synthetic products, and putting them in a drink with phony colorings and phony flavorings, and with massive amounts of caffeine, and there's just nothing good over time that can come from it. So know that if you're the type of person that, and also with Red Bulls and what it's doing to your cardiovascular system, turning blood into mud, stuff like that they're seeing in the ER room from guys that are overdoing it, drinking alcohol and Red Bulls, and that's a real issue, very poisonous. But just something to look at and say, well, maybe it might be time to cut back, and maybe two or three of those a day is not a good thing, and maybe none of them a day is a great thing. So something to think about. Reducing or eliminate alcohol. We all know what alcohol does to our body. Like I said, it not only is it could be a massive amount of calories, but really more importantly, as a poison in your body, it just stunts your metabolism for up to 72 hours, and that's a long time to try to get back online, and also it will affect your workouts as well and create more inflammation. And it's a great workout, but why am I so sore? It could be from the Friday night you had. And so these are just things to look at. And again, you reduce it or eliminate it. If you're looking to get out of pain, these may be areas that could help you if you follow eliminating or avoiding them, or reducing them. Emotional guidelines. Just some things to add to what you're already doing, or if you need help outside of work, or getting with the community, of whatever that looks like, that's great. One of the things that I put up here is walking 30 to 45 minutes a day. It's some of the functional medicine doctors that I've talked to, one guy said, I can make $300 on my patients by just telling them to walk 30 to 45 minutes a day for the next 60 days. That's where the most benefit comes from. But he couldn't do it. He goes, before we get into anything, I want you to do this. And he would prescribe walking to all of his patients, and just start on a regimen of walking. And then let's talk later. Let's talk in a month. or let's, do that in conjunction with these other things. But the main thing was he found more benefit if he could get his clients to walk 30, 45 minutes a day than anything else he did. Why? Yeah, it's light exercise. It's movement. It's not even really exercise. It's just movement. But what really does is it's very hard. And some people can do it. And of course, then you see people walking down the street staring at their phone in the crosswalk. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about setting the phone down or just, putting it in your pocket. There's no headphones. It's there in case you need it for an emergency, but you're not on it and you're just disconnecting. If you can leave it at home, that's even better, and just go for a 45 minute walk in nature, shut your mind down. And it's a form of moving meditation, right? And so it's all about getting your mind to calm down. It does have physical benefits. If your mind's always on, it's very hard to change your body. Okay, understand that. So getting that to calm down and getting that quiet space. And getting outside is another aspect of walking. This is not walking on a treadmill. That doesn't work because the treadmill pushes you along. Walking on a treadmill, same thing with running on a treadmill and running on real ground. Those are two different things. But walking on a treadmill, try to avoid that. But if that's what you have to do, then by all means. But just the main thing is getting out and getting some fresh air. A community. This, I think, is where COVID has really hit us the hardest. Is taking away our ability to be with community, especially with the holidays coming up and some of the things that are happening, and the mandates that have come out now. It's really taken a toll on us, and myself included. It's very, very frustrating. But just all I can say is I know it's going to get better. We're going to get through it. And we're doing, my family and I, we're doing Skype with my family in Texas and Washington, and where we normally all come together for Thanksgiving and Christmas. That's not going to happen this year. So we're making the best of it, and having community online. And just like this here, it's kind of hard to do. It's very hard staring at a screen at people that are out there somewhere. But hey, it's the best we can do, and we'll get through it, and having hope. But when all this is over with, the friends, the family, church, if that's what you do, providing service for others, in any way, shape, and form, and getting in front of people and smiling and shaking hands and a high five. And it's going to be a good time when that comes back. And it's very important that we have that, and trying to stay away from being isolated where your mind can go on you, and cause havoc. So trying to get back in the community as much as possible. Developing hobbies. You've heard that before. It's amazing how many people, all they do for a hobby is their job, or they work on their house and then they go back to work and then they come back and they do something in the garage, but there's really no real hobbies that they work on. But developing a hobby, whatever that looks like, whatever you're thinking about, where it's flying model airplanes or doing pottery or whatever that looks like. I've taken up quilting and it's going great. Just playing. Not yet, but so finding a hobby that works for you to get your mind off of things. Another one is accepting where you're at. This is a very hard one because a lot of folks, we spend so much time in the future and the worry about where we're not right now. And we waste a lot of time. We waste tomorrow's energy on, we waste today's energy on tomorrow, worrying about where we're not at, instead of paying attention to where we are at and going, you know what, this is right where I'm supposed to be, doing what I'm doing. But oh man, I was supposed to be here by now. My career should have taken me here. My relationship with my wife or my husband should have been here. My kids aren't turning out the way I thought. They're completely different than what I thought they could be or what I think they should be. And so that's an expectation that's not being met. So I think it's very important to look at the expectations we have in life and go, how well is that working? All of my expectations with other people, my expectation to have my wife act a certain way, my kids to be a certain way, that usually ends up in failure. And so accepting them for who they are, accepting yourself with where you're at, with your job. Yeah, are there things to change? Then that's the future. Let's move forward and take the steps to change it. But also giving yourself the grace to understand that's who you are. That's what makes up who you are. And that accepting of this is how things are, right? It's not giving in. It's just seeing it and getting eyes on it, and then being active, taking steps to change it. And it's a difference between being a thermostat and a thermometer. right? And so, a thermostat will see where it's at, and then you can move the dial and change it. Thermometers will just tell you all the time what the temperature is, but they don't change. And we all know what thermometers are, who they are, and there's a lot of complaining. They're not very happy. They don't do anything about it. I would encourage you to be a thermostat and change the dial. And okay, if you don't like what the temperature you're at, change it. And there's a lot of programs out there, and there's a lot of help there waiting for you, because we're all trying to do the same thing. Concentrate on being grateful. We have a lot of things to be grateful in this world, in this country, in the district, especially as an outsider coming in and only being here 2 years, but living a full life outside of here. I will tell you, I'm extremely grateful to be here. What a great organization. I'm not just saying that either. It's a great organization to work for, and to be a part of, being a part of all you guys' lives. And it's just a fantastic organization. Serving others, that's what you're all built to do, both day staff and line staff. You all do a great job of it. And it's in our pillars of who we are: service to others. And nobody does it better. So those are the things that really help with those emotional issues and get the focus off of ourselves. Rest and recovery. Sleep is a third of, and really it's a half of everything we're doing. If we don't have sleep, then say goodbye to training goals, say hello to pain, bad moods, you name it. You all know what I'm talking about. And not just the line staff, day staff. There's plenty of issues with sleep, and not getting enough because of stress or pain or whatnot. But really diving more into sleep and how we can get better sleep. That's something I'm working on right now. Studying up more on types of sleep patterns and how to monitor them, how to get them better. I've written an article or two about it, and that's always something we got to pay attention to, because lack of sleep is going to cause a lot of trouble, and it does. Especially now that we got medics that are getting more and more calls and more wall time and all that. It's what can we do with the sleep, because that's where your rest and recovery comes from. And it's why we do it for, I don't know what it is, 25 years out of our lives. A third of our life should be sleeping. Kind of hard to think about, but it's the truth. It's where we recover. So if you're not getting good sleep, do whatever you can to take care of that, or find out if you have sleep apnea or if you have any issues there, because in the long run, that's one of the big determiners of a healthy retirement, is getting your sleep patterns dialed in. Okay. Social media breaks, meditation, tuning out with the social media breaks, and walking and just calming down. The walks are not about exercise. They're about getting your brain to calm down. Gives your body something to do, and your brain can kind of tune out and stare at nothing. Just as long as you keep your eyes open, so getting some more of that off time and tuning out. And of course, if you partake in meditation, then continue. And again, I have access to sensory deprivation tanks. If anybody's interested in figuring out what those are about, or want to try them out, give me an email. I'll get you a free session up in El Dorado, up in Folsom. But things like that, where you can just tune out for 45 minutes to an hour and a half, and just let that body recover, and let your brain kind of reload. Finding fun activities and hobbies. We talked about it earlier. Important to just enjoy yourself more, and get yourself in positions where you can do that. And so that's just sitting down and going, okay, what do I want to do, and then finding a way to get it done. So, but these are very, very important to our ability to keep our stress levels down and be successful both at work and at home. Well, that's it. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time. If you have any questions, once again, the number 916-616-2491 is the number, or you can email me on the district email with your questions. Like I said, I've got a couple already. Couple questions about good fats and bad fats. That stay tuned. We're going to put something out probably in the newsletter, or do another video on that. And if you want to hear more about a topic, let's dive into it and make a video and put it out there to everybody. Have a good collaborative effort. But again, thank you for your time. Be safe. Have a great Thanksgiving. Remember, everything in moderation. No need to quit everything, but and if you need any help, please feel free. If I don't know the answers, I'll find somebody who does. And I appreciate your time. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Looking back on it now, I remember several calls that probably did have a substantial effect on me, but at the time, I didn't realize it, and I certainly didn't show it.
If somebody was to say, boy, that call really affected me, then, we would razz them. It's one of those things that just gets passed on from generation to generation, and it's not always a good thing.
May 31st of 2011, a little after 8 o'clock in the morning, we received a response for a residential structure fire. And my assignment on the truck that day was to go to the roof and cut a ventilation hole.
The roof was pristine. There was no obvious signs of any weakness.
As I bent down to make my ventilation cut, there was a failure of the rafter system.
My rescue firefighter was yelling through his mask, at which point I turned around and Jeff was gone.
I fell approximately 18 feet and landed on my back on the garage floor. I could feel myself beginning to burn. I never stopped fighting to try to get out of the situation I was in, but I truly didn't think that I was going to come out of that alive.
We finally got to the front of the garage. The crew's obviously pulling him out. Looks like he's gone. And, in the fire service, we're a family, and I considered Jeff my brother. And I just remember thinking that this is not supposed to happen on my watch.
I received second-degree burns over about 10% of my body surface. As far as burn injuries go, they weren't really very significant at the time.
I knew he was going to make it, but still, I felt that he was in there because of my action.
When I went back to work, I did have a lot of things that brought up what they call triggers. I would open a compartment on the truck and they'd had a fire the night before, and that certain smell of smoke would hit me and it would kind of take me back. When I got calls, there was a physical response to it where I would kind of feel nauseated. I would have a hard time breathing or feel tight-chested and a little short of breath. I became very tense and very angry about a lot of things. The obvious work-related symptoms diminished. So it took me a long time to connect the dots and figure out that those changes that were happening with me were actually because of what had happened to me earlier.
I found myself just pacing back and forth and just over and over, just analyzing every aspect of that call. It's killing me inside to think that he's hurt and it's something that I did. I put on a face and just continued to tell myself, you're gonna get that confidence back. And I did get to the point where my confidence was back. But there was always that little seed that was planted, and it affected me, and it's to this day still affects me.
Families are always the first to notice. They live with you, they know how you were before, and they know what you have become.
My wife at one point pulled me aside and said, listen, I know that you're hurting, but it's affecting the family, and it's not fair to us that you are treating us like this.
In the fire service, it's absolutely imperative that you don't show weakness. I went above and beyond to try to show that everything was okay.
I had always been what I like to think, the fireman's fireman, just aggressive and just get in there and get the job done.
I reached a point in dealing with this, feeling like I wasn't going to get through another day without losing my mind, and I had a pretty significant post-traumatic stress injury. That's what ultimately led me to going for professional help.
A battalion chief that I respect highly, and he said, you need to leave your baggage at the door. Have you ever talked to Jeff? I mean, really talk to Jeff, how that has affected him. So I took an opportunity to reach out to Jeff, And the thing that I always will remember Jeff saying, I never knew. I never knew you were going through this. I thought I was the only one.
Probably one of the biggest things that helped me in my recovery and helped me to start moving down the path to being to recovering is finding out that I wasn't the only one that had this going on with me.
And I think that's where we really need to start doing is knocking down that stigma that we can't talk about these incidents that bother us. And once we understand that, we can change the fire service and we can make it a healthier place.
The firefighters of this state go out and put themselves on the line on a daily basis to help rescue others. And there's going to be times where we need a little rescuing ourselves.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'm here to talk a little bit about our mental health and what the peer support program is. And a lot of the stuff you're going to hear is going to kind of parrot what Coach Gallagher was talking about, which is kind of what we want is, the mental part of our lives and the physical part need to kind of intermesh to make sure we're completely healthy throughout. And we'll get into Jeff's video a little bit here in a minute. But the whole goal of kind of this PDP is to make sure that we're retiring with as as physically healthy and mentally healthy as we possibly can. And part of that is having the tools available to us to do that. The department, ever since I got hired or before I got hired, has invested in having a coach available at the academy and throughout the department. So that physical aspect of our jobs has always kind of been pushed into us. So we eat right, we work out. I know when I first got hired here and I went to, on probation, went to a firehouse, very few guys would work out, just kind of hang out and eat pasta and sit in the recliners. And over time, that investment that the department made in having a coach available to us has kind of changed to where now you can just see the equipment in the firehouse has changed, the workout equipment. There's few firehouses now where people don't work out. So that investment at the academy level has paid off for the fire department. The part that kind of was glossed over was the mental aspect of it. And it's the hard part about the mental aspect of it is that it's hard to see. You break an arm, you know what's wrong with it. It's deformed and you know how to fix it. The mental part, you can't see inside someone's head. And we always knew there was an EAP program. There was the critical incident debriefings that you might have to go to. But as far as the wear and tear on our own mental psyche throughout the 25, 30, 35 years on the job wasn't really addressed a whole lot. And so the department now has kind of made that investment back into the academy level. And Jeff Wells, who you saw briefly in the video there, and we'll get into his story in a minute. Jeff goes to the academies now. He's doing it for a couple classes, a couple years now, and gives them a talk. He kind of tells them his story and what the peer support program is and how to get help and where the resources are at. And I know when I got hired here, I had only heard about Jeff Wells. He was a salty fireman on Truck 23 up there with Sal. And he's probably the last person that you would figure would want to do peer support in retirement. And so that, the fact that he's involved in this puts a lot of value into this program. So, and I think we're starting to see that payout, that investment pay off for the department as well. So people that have been in the recent academies and have listened to Jeff's story and know that there's resources out there, I think are making smarter decisions on their own mental well-being. So real quick, I'll tell you guys why I got involved in this stuff. About 5 years ago, and there's, just to backtrack a little bit, there is a PowerPoint that goes along with this. I'm home with a sick kid right now, so the PowerPoint will be in the PDP folder, and there's some information there. It's mostly towards the end of the PowerPoint. So forgive me while I check my notes to make sure I stay on track. So why did I get involved in this stuff? About 5 years ago, I was watching my kids. I've got 4 kids, which is stressful enough. And I was watching my youngest daughter and my second oldest son. I think she was 8 at the time and he was 12. And I was already having a bad day. I was irritable for no reason. I just kind of wanted to be alone. I just wanted to do my own thing and not have to deal with them. And for whatever reason, they got in an argument. And as kids do, the screaming intensified to the point where I lost it and went downstairs and started laying into them pretty good. It was a pretty good epic rant. And it's one of those rants where, you know, they had no room to talk. There was no explaining what was going on. I was on a roll. And at a certain point, I looked down at my daughter's kind of squatting near the ground with her hands covering her ears, and she's just staring at the ground, waiting for the loud noise to stop. And broke my heart. But I was so upset at that point, I couldn't stop. So I went on for about another 20 seconds, and then was able to calm down enough to leave and just go outside. I didn't make sure they were okay. I didn't check in with them. I was pissed. So I went outside, calmed down, and eventually my wife came home, and Sam, my son, told her what happened, and she came out to see what was going on. And I told her, and at that point she said, "Well, you need to go see somebody. I don't know what's going on with you. You're irritable and you're angry all the time, and that's not going to happen again. So you need to make an appointment to go see somebody." So that's when I reached out to Jeff, and he had a recommendation for a therapist and kind of walked me through how to sign up through MHN and get an appointment with a therapist. And going to a therapist, I was nervous. I didn't know what they'd think of me, if they were going to judge me, or you know, who knows, all these thoughts run through your head on what you think they're going to think of you. And told her my story, and you know, after about 10 or 15 minutes, she asked me out of the blue, she goes, "Well, why don't you tell me about the worst call you've ever been on?" Which kind of caught me by surprise. I didn't think that had much to do with this. I hadn't had calls that time. I worked overtime like a lot of guys do, and you know, you're a little sleep deprived, but it's nothing we haven't dealt with before. And so I had two calls that popped right into my head. One was from about 2001. I was a brand new medic in Stockton, and I was on a I-5, and there was a car crash where one SUV caught on fire. Another car had, I think it was 3 dead, 2 injured. The one that caught on fire had 2 dead, and 2 kids were burned pretty badly. So I had that call that I told her about. And then the other call was Larry Canfield, which, if you guys don't know or haven't heard the story of Larry, he's a motorcycle cop that was with the sheriff's department that worked in Rancho Cordova. And everybody at 61, 65, and 62 knew who Larry was. He was a tall guy, salty, had a cigar in his mouth all the time, and he always stopped by the firehouse, looked around. And he was in a pretty horrific accident. And I was able to tell her these stories with a lot of detail. I mean, one was 20 years ago. The other one was back in Larry's was 2008, I believe. And I could remember the heat of the fire from the car wreck. I remember how we found Larry and how we found his partner and what he was saying. And so these details were very intimate and acute. And so we worked through that stuff and had some therapy and processed those calls a little bit. And also, you know, over the period of about 5 or 6 visits, you know, a therapist was able to give me some tools and some awareness for myself as when I'm getting kind of overloaded with stuff and with stress, and how to go about offloading some of the stuff so I don't blow my hatchet at home with the kids. So shortly after that, I think Jeff put out a class, and I signed up, and I've kind of been doing it ever since. I find a lot of value in having that awareness for myself, as well as guys at the firehouse, and knowing how to get a hold of those resources if I need them or if somebody else needs them. Because I think that it's an aspect that there's a lot of stigma around it. There's some misunderstanding around it, and having some of those answers at least it helps me get through my life a little bit, and helps my life at home, but also at the firehouse. We'll go over 4 things. I'm going to go over 4 things basically today. First thing is going to be, how do we get here? How did we get to this point with the peer support program? And then what is it? What is the peer support? And we'll get into some details on that. And then we'll get into some tips for you guys, some things just to keep aware of. As I was researching for this PowerPoint, the topics are so so broad and there's so much information that it's very hard to get into any minute details. But there are some key points that I'll get into here. If you can, there's a few things, and I realize this gets a little dry after a while, but I'll try and make sure that some things stick, hopefully. And then the fourth thing is we'll get into EAP a little bit and how that works and the easiest way to kind of use that program. So first things first is how, so Jeff Wells has kind of been the guy to go to for the last 4 or 5 years. After his call, he did have some issues, and I didn't know Jeff, when he had that call, and and if you ever have a chance to listen to his story, I highly encourage you listen to it, because he's very open about it, and as well as Bob Bruce, the captain that's in that video, because it helps. I think they believe it helps others, and it helped me. It was very interesting to hear and moving to hear his story. But I think Jeff kind of felt like he fell through the cracks a little bit, and so he kind of pushed this peer support program to the forefront in this region. And so it's now a regional program. All the departments in our region are involved in it. City, us, Consumnes, West Sac, dispatch is involved in it, Roseville. It's throughout this region. And so the nice part about that is that if you need to talk to somebody, but you don't want to talk to somebody in your department, you can find somebody in Roseville or in West Sac that might have a similar background as you, and you're pretty confident that it's not going to get spread around your fire department. There is an educational component to it. So we had a basic peer support class. It's a 3-day class. We just had one in November. We're going to have one at the end of January. I highly encourage you, if you're interested in this stuff, to send me an email and we'll get you signed up for the class. And then there's also, once you're on the peer support team, there's also usually there's quarterly meetings. Obviously COVID has kind of thrown a wrench into that system, but those are the meetings to kind of get together, see what kind of trends are out there, see what issues other fire departments might be having, problems. Sometimes they have guest speakers. We had a CAL FIRE captain that was involved. He was a con crew, or he was in charge of a con crew at the Paradise Fire, I believe. He got burned when the winds shifted on him. He was holding the barbed wire fence open like a boxer getting in the ring, so his crew could get out while he was burning. So it's very educational and intimate to listen to some of these stories on not only what they went through, but what helped them, what didn't help them, the thought processes that they have. So potentially as peers, if we see somebody going through a similar episode, we might have a little bit better background and education on what might work for them. So those are quarterly meetings. Try and go to 2 a year if you can. If not, it's okay. And the goal has been, and this has all kind of been set up with Jeff and the other committee members, is to get 10% of the department, whatever department they're in, trained. So I think for Metro Fire, our goal is to have 70 people trained. That's a big goal. I think we're maybe at 45 or 50 right now. West Sac or the airport has, they have a lot less people, so they need 2 or 3 people trained. So that's kind of the goal with the basic peer support class, is to have 10% of the people working there trained up. So what is peer support? So peer support's basically, it's us. It's the fire department personnel. It's people that are trained in this stuff. It's all of us kind of keeping an eye on each other and making sure that we're doing okay at work and also outside of work, and making sure that calls aren't backing up on us, and we're mentally capable to handle those calls and still live a productive life. I think we're in a position now with this department. We're very, very young, and we'll get into some of the signs and symptoms and stuff, but we're very young, and the expectation is you just kind of suck it up and not deal with stuff. And hopefully some of the educational component in the academy and stuff like that has brought some awareness to the younger guys to take care of that stuff and ask for help if they need it. But the peer support part of it, and it just being us, is that it allows us to talk to people that kind of understand our job, understand what we might be going through, and not just, sometimes we can go home and talk to our wives or husbands, but they don't really, unless they're in that profession, it's hard to explain to them what it's like to go on a call where you've got, multiple people on the ground and you have to pick one to treat, and some of those details, they get kind of lost. And so having us involved in this stuff kind of helps offload and vent and start processing that stuff. Another big part of the peer support program is its awareness. So the awareness of what signs and symptoms that I might have, or the signs and symptoms that a coworker might have, what are those? And they're very, very individual. So what my signs are, I get irritable, I'm angry, I withdraw, I might have a few more drinks than I normally do. And those are things that for me are signs that, okay, I need to pull back a little bit, maybe make sure I get a little bit more sleep. Like Coach was saying, go for a walk, which is great advice. Just get out of the house. Sometimes you just need to drive up into the hills and go for a walk. So that's stuff that works for me, might not work for other people. But having that awareness of what works is very important. And what those signs and symptoms are for each person can be very, very important with this program. How to listen in my opinion, is one of the big parts it's becoming more and more difficult for us with phones and social media, and the phone constantly pinging and dinging and buzzing and all that crap. Okay, so how do you, if I come to somebody and I have an issue and I'd really like to offload some of this stuff or talk about a call that we were on, and they're constantly checking their phone, they're not engaged. They're getting 20% of what I'm saying because they want to see what the latest thing was on their phone. So peer support the class kind of teaches you how to listen, how to parrot back what they say so you completely understand all that stuff. If you're not if you haven't done that, the biggest thing I can probably push for you for this is recognize if somebody needs to talk to you, just put the phone down, turn it over, put it on silent. If it buzzes, leave it alone, let them get through that stuff, because for whatever reason, they've entrusted this information with you. Just let them offload it. That is very, very hard to do. Trust me, I'll be at the computer, and I've got emails to write. My phone's kind of buzzing. I might have stuff going on at home, and somebody has something that they need to offload. Phone's off in the corner, so I can't even reach it, and I'm going to listen to their story and see what's going on. Most times, it's just guys that need to vent. And that's good. I mean, we all kind of need that. But, in that rare occasion, if they need maybe a little bit more help and you're not engaged, you may miss something. So peer support, the awareness of signs, symptoms, how to listen, and also how to find resources. So some of the stuff that they teach in the class is how do you find those resources? We have a lot of therapists. All of the therapists have been vetted. Jeff and other people involved with the I think another therapist goes with him, and they will go interview a therapist to make sure that they are qualified for what we need in our cache of therapists. A big one is trauma work. So whether you want to admit it or not, when we go on these terrible calls, or you have a close call or something bad, something goes wrong in the medic on a patient you had, those are little chinks in the armor that if you don't process them well can add up a little bit. So some of the therapists or the therapists that they typically look for, at least as far as trauma work, is they need to be able to do stuff like EMDR and brain spotting. It's a type of therapy that kind of helps with the trauma stuff. And again, big topics I'm not going to get into. Just realize that the therapists, when you pick those therapists, they've been interviewed and vetted, and they kind of know how to deal with what we go through. And part of the peer support and having those resources, okay, well, how do I find those? And we'll get into some of that when we get into the EAP stuff, part of it. Last two things that peer support is, it's got to be confidential. So if what you're telling me, if you're confiding in me to tell me something, and then I go spread it around the firehouse, obviously it's going to be, if I work it down at Station 50, it'll be north of the river in no time. If that's what's happening, then this whole program kind of falls apart. The hard part with this is when you have been part of an issue or an event with somebody, or somebody has an individual problem going on, the rumors start, right? And so we're never going to stop the rumors. Most rumors have at least some truth to them. Also, most time there's a lot of misinformation in there. The trick is, if you are that person that knows some information and you hear the rumors going around, to hold on to that confidentiality. And it's very hard, in my opinion, it's very hard to hang on to stuff when false rumors are going around. And there's ways you can maybe steer the conversation when that's starting to happen to stop the roll a little bit, but you got to keep the confidential part. And that's very tricky to do. But if we start losing that, nobody's gonna open up to anybody, and we'll just kind of go back in our bunks and our corners and not talk to anybody. And that's not what we want. Okay. So the confidential part is very important. And then the last part, that peer support, it's not what it's not is therapy. So we're not therapists. We're not going to fix problems. We are, we listen, we let people vent. And then if you need more, not most people don't, or most guys or people at the fire stations, they just want to vent and offload stuff. And that's fine. That's great. So let them do that. If people are getting into an issue where maybe things have been compounding a little bit and they may need a little bit more help, or you recognize that what they're telling me, I don't have the tools to fix. Hey man, have you thought about maybe talking to somebody who's specializes in this stuff? So, don't feel like, even if you haven't gone through the peer support class or any of that stuff, if somebody's confiding in you, you're not going to be able to probably fix stuff, but all they're looking for is to listen. So it's not therapy. So a lot of this stuff is now becoming more readily available, and the more guys we get trained in this stuff, the better. All right. So moving on, some tips. So one of the things Coach hit on this a lot as far as stress in our lives, and so there were some aspects in there. It's mostly Coach deals a lot with physical stuff, but it really coincides with the mental part, and he touched on a lot of this stuff. So the way I kind of like to describe stress is that everybody's got a bucket. And maybe you guys have heard this before, but to me, it's a very good analogy. You've got a bucket and you've got stressors in your life that constantly drip into that bucket and fill it. There's good stressors and there's bad stressors. So, you want to go work out and go for a run for that day. That can be a good stressor, unless you go try and run Hamburger Hill in 2 minutes flat, where you're going to break something. And now you have to find that happy place. So we do need the good stressors in our lives, because that pushes you to maybe, ask somebody out on a date, or take a promotional exam, or put a bid in for a house, or all those things that kind of push you forward to live your life. Otherwise, you could just sit in the fetal position and play Call of Duty all day and not live your life. So you do need those good stressors. The trick is that those are going to fill your bucket up as well. And when the bad stressors kind of start filling up your bucket, now you're having some issues with your bucket overflowing. Can be anything: physical stressors, environmental stressors, stuff at work, stuff at home, psychological, emotional. All that stuff kind of fills your bucket. And there are different kinds of stressors in our lives. So there's acute stressors. So for us at the firehouse, you go on a call, it's a bad call. Vehicle accident with a couple of fatalities. That's an acute stressor. That's a one-time thing. It happens. And most people might be fine with it. They're able to compartmentalize that and go, well, it was an accident. Nothing we did caused it, and off we go. Still fills your bucket up a little bit, but if you're able to process it, it gets dumped out, which is good. There's also type of stressor called episodic stressor, which is obviously getting into some more head stuff. But the episodic stuff is when you have those acute calls that are happening over and over again, and not just at work, but maybe, you have a stretch of bad luck. The water heater broke, I got a flat tire, I had a bad call at work. And so those little stressors are, for whatever reason, are stacking up on each other. And then there's chronic. And the two examples I like to use for those, one is, say your back hurts all the time. You're never able to kind of get rid of that pain. And so your bucket's half full all the time. It starts to feel normal. This is what normal is for me. The other one that we're starting to see a little bit more is retirement. So I'm retired, I'm out. Well, I'm not, but theoretically, if somebody's retired, that's it, you're out. And if you're not able to process that a little bit, or for whatever reason, your bucket's maybe half full all the time, and then things kind of stack up and it never kind of gets worked on or processed. That's fine. That happens. That's part of life. The trick is recognizing that, having that awareness again, and being able to reach out for help, because there's all kinds of people willing to help. And so having that awareness of where you're at in life, Coach touched on being accepting where you're at. It's hard, especially as you get older, or maybe you're on a medic that you don't want to be on, or whatever. Accepting where you're at can be one of those chronic stressors. You're stuck, and if you never deal with that, your bucket's always half full, and then it overflows quite a bit easier. So those are some of the things to think about. And where we get into trouble is when our bucket's constantly overflowing. And you see it in guys, especially on the medic, potentially, is when they're just getting hammered all the time, and they go on a call, and it's a benign call. It's a little old lady maybe that doesn't feel very well, and they're already pushing a code 4, and why are we here? And they're angry that we're there. That's could not be a time, especially if you're a company officer or a senior firefighter, maybe pull that person aside and go, "Hey man, are you doing all right? You seem a little upset over that for no real reason." The tricky part with all of this stuff is that it's very individual. It's very, what might fill my bucket doesn't fill somebody else's bucket. Whatever I do to help empty my bucket doesn't work for other people. I hate running, but I know people that when they're stressed out, they'll go run for 4 hours. That would destroy me. So understanding what those are, and that goes back to the awareness component of this, is what do you guys need? What works for you? What doesn't work for you? What stresses you out and what doesn't stress you out? So that is a very important part of this. And so as you kind of get into things that fill your bucket, it's things at home, it's work life, it's maybe health related issues. And then big one that Coach touched on, and you're going to hear more of this, is fatigue. If you're not getting very good sleep, you're upset because you didn't sleep last night, because you were up having calls that didn't matter. And now you're home, and maybe your wife has a new kid, but she needs to get some sleep. So now you're up again. It just compounds and compounds and compounds. And so those are things that just constantly will fill your bucket a little bit. So what empties it? Again, this is going to be very individual to you. I know guys that working out, that is their thing. When they are stressed out, they go work out. Again, it's about finding that healthy spot that you're not so upset and just, screw it, I'm going to blow out, and do 400-pound squats when you're used to doing 250. Well, now you've got a big problem. But finding that happy place where you can burn off some steam and get a good workout in is a good way to empty your bucket. Or like Coach was saying, go for a walk. At the firehouse or at work, a big thing that might benefit guys is just taking a set off, take a day off, take 2 days off. I know younger guys don't have a whole lot of time to take off. So if that's the case, maybe back off on the overtime a little bit. So you get those full 4 days. Again, I understand mandatories are kind of around right now, especially during the holidays. But try and find ways to get maybe a little bit of extra time off, just to decompress, get out of the firehouse, and do some hobbies. That's another thing that'll help this stuff, is find hobbies that work for you. So for me, I used to play softball to the point where I blew out my shoulder. So now I've got to find other things to do, because I couldn't break a glass window now if I threw a ball at it. And that's okay. I can still do my job. I can still do things. But I've got to find other hobbies that work for me. So find that stuff outside of work that'll help you guys. And then sleep. You know, I know for a lot of guys, especially younger guys, you want to socialize and be out and enjoy those 4 days. And socializing can be a great thing that kind of helps offload some stuff and vent and get some good laughs in and get some good story time in. But you do need to be aware of how much sleep you might need. And I'll tell you now, as you get older, you're going to need more and more sleep. I don't recover like I used to. That's just the way it is. So work on figuring out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Right now, I'll tell you what's probably the thing that everybody's common in is that if you don't get sleep, there's probably not a whole lot of people at the firehouse that do well with not a whole lot of sleep. So that is a very, very big, important one. So what does it look like when your bucket's overflowing? I could put a list on here, but it would cover up the whole screen. It almost looks like one of those you know, those drugs that they advertise on TV with all the things that can go wrong with you if you take it: nausea, vomiting, headache, diarrhea, all that stuff. The list is long, and there are lists out there, and I've got one. And you know, when I was going through my stuff, I got it from, I think it was Kevin Snyder. I just started circling things that I recognized. You know, and I circled, I don't know, 3 or 4 of them. And then I gave it to my wife, and she circled quite a bit more. So, you know, like I said, for me, I get withdrawn. I want to be by myself. I get irritable, angry. Small things upset me. Other things might just be physical: headaches, stomach problems. You get dizzy, have trouble, you know, breathing for whatever reason. You know, signs of anxiety. You can have sleep problems like nightmares and stuff like that. It's very individual. Basically, I think the biggest thing is if you live with somebody, a wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, or anything like that, have them be aware of some of these things. And if they come and tell you, hey man, you're not acting right, you know, I can tell you're not sleeping at night, you're waking up with cold sweats, that might be something, you know, it's a trigger for maybe you need to get a little bit more, you know, just a little bit more help, or maybe just vent or see what's going on, take some time off. But having that awareness of what your symptoms might be is very, very important. And if you don't know, like I said, ask somebody else. Hey, you know, it's weird to say, how have I been acting? But if somebody comes to you and says you've been acting, you know, you seem like you're on edge. Okay, well then maybe it's time to look in the mirror and see what's going on there a little bit. So now what? What do you do? What do you do if you feel like you need a little bit more help, or you've tried venting with somebody at the firehouse and it's not working quite well? Where do you go to get help? There's quite a few resources now on your desktops to find people in the P drive. You go to the P drive, and this stuff's all on the PowerPoint. But if you go in the P drive and public folder, there's a peer support folder. It's got all the names of the people that have taken the peer support class, has their phone numbers on there. I think it has what shifts they work on. You can find somebody that way at Metro Fire. If that doesn't work for you, and that's perfectly fine, there's a FireStrong website. There's an icon on your desktop. It's the Maltese cross. It's got fire in the background with the firefighter walking right in the middle of it. That's kind of a one-stop shop website. It's a nice website that has everything. It's more of a regional. It's a website that the whole region has access to. So it's got Roseville's information, city's information, but our information's on there as well. How to use MHN, the phone numbers to call, the therapists that we use, and it's also got all the peer supports members that have taken the class in the region. So like I said before, if you want to talk to somebody, maybe you have a military background and you're struggling with something that happened in that aspect of your life, and you don't want to talk to somebody who wasn't in the military, you can go into that website and find somebody that has a military background and reach out to them. That everybody's got their access, their information on there to access, and they're all waiting for phone calls if people need it. That's kind of why, you know, we all took the class, is to just be available if somebody needs to vent. So those are 2 areas to start. There's also a new email out. It's just wellness@metrofire.ca.gov. That kind of goes to some of the peer support members. That's another good confidential way to reach out if you feel like you want to reach out and get some help. And then there's phone numbers. And again, I apologize, the PowerPoint's not up, but there's phone numbers in the master phone directory. We now have shift coordinators on A, B, and C. So Jeff Wells is still involved with this program. He's just taking a back seat from the administrative stuff and just doing peer stuff. He's very connected throughout the state and the region as far as getting resources and help and all that stuff. But now we're having shift coordinators. So it's myself on B shift, Jeremy Crawford, and Ryan Pullis on the other shifts. And our phone numbers are on that directory. We're always available. You can still reach Jeff. There's a district phone number. It's 859-4545. That goes directly to Jeff's phone. And so there's a lot of ways to kind of reach out and start getting help. And it could be simple questions like, I don't know how to get a hold of MHN. Cool, I'll send you the information. It's fine. But that might be a resource. And my advice would be to kind of have some of these phone numbers in your phone. That way, if somebody needs, just, hey, who do I call? You can just share it with them. Just send it. Go here, call Jeremy. He's good to go with this stuff. He's working today. Maybe you can reach out to him and you guys can get help that way. So those are some things you can do as far as getting started if you're not sure where to start. The other thing we were going to go over was the EAP stuff. We've had EAP since before I got hired. And I'll be honest, I didn't, you get the flyer and it's like, okay, I'll never need this. I don't know what this is for. This is more for somebody who's full blown PTSD and they're not coming back from work for whatever reason. I'll never need this stuff. And it's really, it's much more than that. The department has invested, like they invested with the coach, they've invested in this program, and it's basically an insurance policy to where if somebody needs help with anything, it could be marital problems with the kids, it can be just problems with anxiety, alcohol, any of that stuff. If you feel like you just need to talk to somebody and have a professional kind of do an assessment and get you some help, that's kind of what the EAP program is set up for. The nice thing is that the department pays for all of us to go, but MHN doesn't tell them who goes and Metro Fire doesn't ask. So it's confidential in that aspect. I do think Metro Fire gets maybe a number like, oh, we had 4 people or 10 people use it this month, and that's it. They don't know who's using it or not, which is nice for retirees. If you have a retiree that may need some help, we can set them up and they can still use this service. So it's kind of nice to have that available to us. We use MHN. It's basically just an insurance provider, kind of like Blue Shield or Kaiser. MHN gets us 5 visits with the therapist, and we'll get into how to set that up here in a minute. But you get 5 visits with a therapist. If you need more, the therapists are very good at setting that up and how you can get a couple more. If you need something more long-term, then I think they'll work with how to set that up outside of the MHN program. There is also a way through MHN, if you have a bad call. So let's say you had a close call, say you're driving to a fire and your fire engine gets T-boned and you guys roll over and it's a very significant incident. If you think you may need help with that or may need to talk to somebody about that, what you can do is reach out to any of the shift coordinators or Jeff, and we'll call MHN and call it activating hours. So what that does is MHN then activates you so you get more hours for that incident. So instead of the 5 visits, I believe you get 10 available to you. So it's kind of a nice perk to have through MHN. All we need to know is that we don't need to know why. We don't need to know the details. Just, hey, I had a bad call. I want to activate some hours so I can go talk to somebody. Done. We just need to know about it so we can do that. So that's kind of nice through MHN to have that available to us. So how do you use it? I didn't really know how to use it till I went through Jeff, and he kind of walked me through it. It's pretty simple. I will say, so like with our therapists now, the therapists are very busy. COVID's kind of played an impact in that. And a lot of the therapists that do trauma work, they go to retreats, or they will go to big incidents and kind of work in those areas. So they're very busy. So my advice would be to reach out to a therapist and see if you can make an appointment first. And if you're having trouble with that, you can ask us and we'll help get you set up with somebody. And we do have, like I said, all those therapists have been vetted, but get an appointment done first. And then that way you're set up with a therapist instead of going, well, pick somebody for me. I want to see this therapist. She lives next to me. I know who she is and all that stuff. So once that appointment is set up, you call MHN. Again, the phone number will be on the PowerPoint. 1-800-227-1060. You call them up and you tell them I work for Metro Fire. If they ask for your code, it's Metro Fire EAP. Pretty simple. And you say, I've got an appointment with Kay Williams. I just need a number, and they kind of walk you through that. It's as simple as that. MHN will give you like a 6 or 7 digit number. So just write that down and give it to your therapist. And basically that's how they get paid. It's kind of a confirmation number. And that's it. And then you're set up. And my only advice would be, if you do get set up with a therapist, take advantage of all 5 appointments. You never know what's going to kind of stir up. You might think after 2 that everything's fine, and maybe it is. Maybe try going that 3rd visit and just see if anything else pops up. They're very good at kind of digging through some of the stuff and asking questions and seeing what's really going on and diagnosing things. And that's kind of about it. I think you guys all should have gotten this flyer. Kind of hard to see there, but should have got this 3-fold flyer that Brett Cater put together. It's very good. Try and hang on to it. It's got all the information you need to get started. And like I said, if you guys ever have any questions or any problems, reach out. We're all available. Jeff calls back very quickly, and I try and do the same. If I don't recognize the number, sometimes I don't pick up, but leave a message and I'll call you right back. And I know Jeremy and Ryan Polish are kind of the same way. You don't need to talk to us either. You can go to any peer support person. And if you go down the list and you don't like anybody on that list, just find somebody you trust and start talking to them. It's okay. It's no big deal. But what we're trying to do with this PDP, which I think is very important, is how do we retire healthy and mentally and physically and financially, and get out of here with as many faculties as we have. So if you guys have any questions, shoot me an email or you can text me. And I think that's it.
All right, thanks Ryan for sharing your story and all your information with us. Next up, we're going to be talking about your finances. So we have Captain Dustin Rodriguez here, and we also have a retired engineer, Roger France, to share some of their expertise with you. So stay tuned.
All right, can everybody see me? All right, thanks. So we've been talking about a lot of well-being, your well-being, and how you can better prepare yourself. So one of the financial stressors are one of the top stressors in your lives. About 1/3 of all divorces are caused by financial stresses. So having those affairs in mind and talking to your spouse about those, knowing your financial situation is something that we can take one of those stressors off your plate. Hold on one sec. Can I get my papers over there? So the pictures you see on the screen in front of you, they kind of represent what you envision in your retirement. So the top left picture is going to show about 75% of what your current income is now, modest. Bottom picture is about 85%. That's what most people, when they retire, use about 80% of their current income. And then the top right picture is about 105% of your current income. That means heavy travel, paying for expenses, expensive trips, expensive hobbies, gifting money to grandkids, those types of things. So those are what does your retirement look like? And that's a personal question. Everybody's going to be different. So when we're going through this and you're looking at saving, what do you want? We're going to go through here. So through our Sac Metro Fire 457 website, there's a little interactive planner called Nationwide Retirement Interactive Planner. So we're going to log in here. Try that again. All right. Maybe not today. That's why. So when you log in, it looks something along this line. And on the bottom left here is my interactive retirement planner. And the cool thing about this, we'll briefly just show you, but it has all of your pension built in. It has Social Security built in. If you have a spouse that's in private sector, and you can really get a decent idea of what your income looks like in retirement, and if you have any gaps. So you just come in here. Your first one, this one's already set up because there is some information already input to this demo model. But you type in your name, your monthly salary, pension. If you have Social Security, there's the button right there for including your spouse. You input all that information, and it can tell you whether or not you're on track. And basically, it shows today's dollars in retirement's dollars, and you can adjust this to look at that 75% of your income, 85% or 105%. You can adjust what you might actually need on this to see where your gap is or if you're doing okay. So it's a great tool. It's really easy to use right here in our sacmetrofire457.com. Now, back to the PowerPoint. All right. So I'm going to have Roger, one of the things that we have through the 457 committee, so there's 9 of us on the committee. 5 of us are active, 2 are retired, and 1 is an administrative person. And the whole idea of the committee is to make sure that you're getting the best plan that you can get. We're trying to reduce our fees and give you a low cost but well-performing portfolio. So one of the things that we do is drive our costs down, and we do that by pooling our money together. So Roger France is going to jump on in here and talk about how the fees can really affect you over your career.
Hi, everybody. I worked for a predecessor fire district. It was Rancho Cordova. And I wanted to give you a little bit of history with our department. We had one of the worst retirement systems around at the time. It was about 60 to 65% of your end income was what you were going to get in retirement. So in 1987, they brought in a deferred comp. It was a 401k through Aetna. There was one service provider that worked for them. It was the only game in town. And so it basically, we had no idea what fees we were paying over time and what the impact was. Around, I guess it was about 2000, we went into TDS through the mergers, the different mergers. And then the committee was formed to go have an RFP. And basically, AGI Valak had won the contract, and then Nationwide's continued to win it. And I know that they're going out to RFP again. The one great thing is the committee is a vested group of people that have their money in here too. So they want to do the best for everybody. And by lowering the fees, you really don't know what the impact is overall, but just think about how long you're in the system. Say 25 years of working and 25 years in retirement, you got 50 years. And if you're paying 1% more than the next person, you've lost 50% of your account basically. So just kind of my only advice for this would be educate yourself on the terminology, talk to the advisors or the people on the committee, get their input, and learn how to invest outside of the pro account if you can, because there's added fees for that. But be responsible for your own happiness. In general, if you took what you have in your account, it took you a lot of hours to put that money in. You just need to learn, spend a couple hours to learn the terminology and how to direct it yourself. So with that, I'll put it back to Justin.
Yeah, so the fees, we tried to reduce the fees in the 457. They're a line item now, and they are very clear of what you're paying per month or per quarter. But there's a lot of financial products out there like life insurances and all those other types of things, and financial advisors that even though you're not paying them a bill each month like you would like a PG&E bill or a utility bill, they're taking a cut of your balance. And if you're unaware of how much you're paying, you could be paying them hundreds of dollars a month, which is thousands of dollars, maybe hundreds of $1,000s over a career. So really look at the cost of what does it cost for them to manage your account when you're looking outside the 457, because our job as a committee is to reduce that in our realm, but we can't make all your financial decisions for you. So if you're using a financial advisor, make sure that you're not that you're making a smart choice and that you're not paying an absorbent amount of fees outside the plan. All right, so this is kind of confusing for most people, but it really is pretty simple. What this shows is the top performing sector for that year. So as you can see, the EM is the purple in 2005, 6, and 7, it was doing great in emerging markets. But then in 2008 and over the next like 7 or 8 years, it was near the bottom. So if you don't have a well-diversified portfolio, meaning that you're buying because everybody's telling you to buy in emerging markets because it's doing great right now, and then 2 years from now, you've lost almost everything that you had. So the way to protect yourself is diversify. You put a little bit in the emerging markets, you put a little bit in the real estate, that's the red one, and you diversify your portfolio, and that's how you get consistent gains throughout the years. This is a long-term, this is financial savings for retirement. This isn't day trading. This isn't looking at a short-term window. You're looking at probably 5 to 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road. So well-diversified portfolios is what we aim for. And one of the ways that we help you do that to make it easy is by when you sign up in either the academy or you talk to one of the deferred comp members, we tend to push people into the target date funds because this is happening, this diversification is happening in your target date fund already for you. So essentially your investment options. So how do you get into the stock market? There's essentially 3 ways that we have it done. The target date fund that I just mentioned too, the target date fund is the day that you plan on using your money or retiring. So you set it in there. Within that fund, they will automatically make it more aggressive or more conservative depending on how far your retirement date is. They're low cost because they're passively managed. And that's why we set most people into there, where this is a fund that is designed to, if you don't ever touch it, rather than just putting money into it, it's still a good choice. Your second option that we give you in the plan is that you can choose your own mutual funds. Mutual funds are groupings of stocks, bonds, and equities that they pull together. They get you a little bit more diversity, and you have options within there of choosing large cap domestic, mid, small bonds, and you can choose how aggressive or conservative you'd like to be within the about 20 funds that we have outlined in our portfolio. And our portfolio isn't just based off of what the deferred comp members want. We have a financial advisor that we hire out that helps us, and he reviews all the fund managers, and that one's constantly being evaluated every 6 months to make sure that our funds that are in there are top performing funds. And then the last one is the Charles Schwab SDO. It's self-directed option where you can pretty much buy any stocks and not options, but stocks and that you want, and you're pretty much able to buy and sell as you wish. Those are for the people who are more savvy and spending a lot of time and want to buy particular stocks. So we get a lot of confusion about IRAs, Roth IRAs, 457, and really what it is. So I'm going to try to break it down for you. I have this flyer that we can email out to everybody as well. But your retirement savings options are kind of dictated in this green box by what we would say like the IRS. They make the rules, right? So they make the rules for what govern an IRA versus a Roth IRA versus a 401k. And we specifically fall into at Metro Fire here at 457 because we're a government entity. So within the 457, you can have a Roth 457 or a traditional deferred compensation 457. We offer both of those, and you can use them concurrently. But essentially what that means is that in this 2019, 2020, and 2021, or 2020 and 2021, the dollar amount is 19,500. So it went up, and it's not going to change for next year. But it says that you can put in $19,500 per year, whether or not you put it in a tax deferred or a post-tax option. The nice thing about a Roth is that any money that you put into there, as it grows in compound interest for a long time, you're not taxed on the gains on your interest. So depending on how long or how soon you start putting into your Roth, you may have a huge amount of money that is going to accrue from your compound interest, and then you don't pay taxes on that. Whereas traditionally it used to be thought that we would defer taxes until retirement because we would be dropping taxable income levels in retirement. It would be more favorable to pay taxes later. But with our pension, our taxable income typically doesn't drop a whole lot. So doing a mix of both of those kind of gives you options when you're in retirement. So we really like the Roth 457 as well as the traditional 457. And another thing within the 457 traditional is that you can take loans from that money. So if there's ever a time where you have something unexpected that you want to make a real estate purchase or something, some sort of emergency comes up, you have that option to take loans. If you just did strictly the Roth, you don't have an option to take loans. So that's why we really think it's good to put money into both sides, your traditional 457 and your Roth 457. These are our nationwide reps. Currently with COVID, it makes it challenging. They used to come out to the stations on a semi-regular basis, but now they're all available virtual. Their phone numbers are on here. Their emails are on here. They will respond to you. We're hoping that once their company policy allows them to start making station visits, they can start doing that before everything opens up. They are starting to allow some small group visitations and things like that. So nationwide is soon going to be coming out to the fire stations if you have questions, but this information will come out in the email as well. So as much as we were talking about retirement planning, there's some short-term financial goals because this financial planning may be 20, 30 years out for you for your retirement. So some of the things that we wanted to get on a short-term checklist is what is your goal for retirement? Just like we had the first pictures, are you a 75%, an 85 or 105% of your income use in retirement? You need to have those conversations with your spouse. Get on the interactive retirement planner and check that out. And your payroll changes are now through Oracle. So if you need to make payroll changes, that's the only way to do it. We won't be able to do it through Nationwide. It's just easier for us to do it through payroll. It's cleaner and there isn't a delay. Sometimes with the money making changes, it goes to Nationwide. It gets back to our payroll division after our payroll division's drop dead dates. And then your money that you wanted to have in this current month is pushed over to the next month, and it's not the way that you had planned. So that's why we're just doing everything through Oracle. And the last thing is an emergency fund. We talk about stressors, but what if you're in a vehicle accident? What if you have a roof leak? What if you have other things that require you to have a lump sum of money right now? So it reduces your stress by having an emergency fund. We hope to have 4 to 6 months of whatever your income would be that wouldn't be replaced. So if you work 4 days of callback a month, that's, let's just say ballpark $4,000, you need to make up that amount of money for about 6 months to be secure. And that's our goal. That money would be best not in a stock or as an emergency fund. I have my note here of somewhere safe that's in like a liquid savings account or a money market account, somewhere where it's easily accessible and it's not going to fluctuate with stock market variations. And now long-term financial planning. Nationwide offers free financial planning. They do it every 6 months or so. They come on out. We schedule it. Usually it's at Station 32. And he'll get a bunch of your information and talk about your expenses and he'll put it into pretty much you get a 28-page document that looks at your pension, inflation, healthcare costs, retiree healthcare costs, what you have in 457, if you have any spouses with 401k balances, and if they're contributing to Social Security, he can put all that together for you. It's a little bit more in depth than your interactive retirement planner, and he's a certified financial assistant, so he can help you, or advisor. He can help you with maybe some questions that you can't get answers to offline. And the other part, there's several members who have had deaths in the family, unexpected, and they have vouched that you really want to have a trust or a living will, mostly a trust, to prepare you for estate planning for those unexpected deaths in the family. And they say that doing a little bit to develop a trust up front will save you a lot in probate and attorney fees at that time. So William Walker Law Office is in 3231's area. And he's been recommended by several of the employees who actually have had to use their trusts. So his information's here. We'll send that out in an email as well. Life insurance. There's a lot of options for life insurance. The district provides a $100,000 policy per employee, which is nice, but that may not be enough depending on how, if you most recently bought a house, if you still have young kids, those types of things. So having a life insurance plan is one of those other things that can help you reduce your stressors in life. And if you have any questions, reach out to any of the deferred comp committee members and we can put you in the same way. There's a lot of first responder discounts out there. So make sure that you price check and know what you're buying before you buy. And also long-term financial planning is if you're saving money for your kids, the 529 plan is a good option. It is a little bit more complicated just because of how you can use your money, but the 529, the money goes tax deferred into your kid's college account or education account, and each child will have their own personal account. You can use up to, for K through 8 or primary, middle, and high schools, K through 12, you can use up to $10,000 a year for a qualified withdrawal. If you use more than that, you can, but you'll just pay state income taxes on that. But if you use it for higher education, there is no max. So you're getting tax deferred dollars that have time to compound interest, and then you're not paying income tax on those. So the 529 plan, we've done some research for California. It's called ScoluShare. It seems to be the best one for us with our fees and taxes and all the rules that are out there. We don't have it set up through payroll right now, but it would be good for you to set up yourself. That's one that we're kind of recommending. $457 catch up. So as you're nearing retirement, the annual limit, like I said, was $19,500. But if you're 50 years old, you can contribute an additional $6,500 per year for a total of $26,000 per year for as long as you're over 50 and you continue to work here. These can change annually. Your dollar amount may be able to go up with inflation and things like that. But that's a great option. If you're 50 and you're already putting in $19,500, you have the option to put another $6,500 away, tax deferred dollars. And that's a great option for you. The other plan is the special catch up. So it's also known as the last 3-year catch up. So it allows you to double the amount that you're able to put in for three consecutive years, but it can't be in the year of your retirement. So if you plan on going at 53, you'd have to start at 49, 50, 51, maybe bleeding into 52, but you can't go at 50 if you're going at age 53, you couldn't be contributing to that year. So this takes a little bit of planning, probably about 5 years out. If you think that you're going to be wanting to put more money into your retirement, this is something that you need to plan for about 5 years pre-retirement. Roger, you have anything there?
No,
Okay.
none on that. No.
So like I said, with your tax deferred part of your 457, you can take up to 50% of your account balance up to $50,000. So it doesn't matter if you have $400,000 in there, you only can take up $50,000 in a loan. Those loan terms are up to 5 years, and they're just a great option. You pay yourself back the interest. So whatever the prime interest rate is set by the government, by the SEC, we pay 1% more. So if they say it's 3%, then you pay yourself back 4%, and that's how you repay your loans. 90-day rule.
Yep. So if you're leaving it towards the end of the year, say October, November, December, you have the option to convert your sick leave and vacation into basically you can put the money into deferred comp that you would have put in into the next calendar year, even though you haven't worked one day. And then basically, so if you retired December 30th, and they move, they kick that a couple days down the road into the new year and make a deposit of whatever you determine into your deferred comp. You can have access to it as soon as it hits, your account. Basically, the positive thing about the 457 plan over the 403B or the 401k is it's accessible the day you leave, basically. And so if you're not giving up that, that much time to move it into the new calendar year, and when you're paying less tax on that amount of money or whatever. So anyway.
So another thing that I have up here is your sick leave sellback. It would start as you start, in order to start selling back sick leave, you need to have 1,000 hours in your A bank. But we need to look at how much are you going to use that time for service credit, or are you going to keep a bank and start selling it back? Which at that point, the part that you don't sell back would then go into your B bank. You can still use that for service credit, but you cannot use that for your lump sum cash out at the end. So really, it's something you need to start looking at is how much sick leave do you need in retirement? Do you really need the 6,000 hours or so that you could accrue over the course of your career? Or would it be better to start doing sellback of your sick leave, maybe in your 30s or so, 30s to 40s, and seeing if that money has time to compound interest if it's greater than what you get in lump sum. So look at your own situation is going to be different, but selling sick leave back year to year is typically a better option just because it has the power of compound interest than selling it lump sum in your retirement, even though that your salary may be a little bit higher than the compound interest overcomes that. So you can contribute to your 457 all the way till the date of your retirement. Your money can remain within the plan of the 457 until the day that you pass away. But once you retire, you're not able to continue to make deposits into that. So your money will stay in there. It will be at the reduced fees, and it will get the performance, and it will be in really good funds. You have all the access to the financial advising and all those types of things, but you just aren't able to add to it. So keeping your money within the plan is a really good option because you just get a lot of financial services and you get really good funds. A lot of the funds that we have within this plan are you're able to get into them because we have high account balances. Like some of them, in order to get into the share class that we are with the cheaper rates, you need, $1 million. So you would never be able to get those if you took your money out and went to another private, retirement savings or something like that, or invest in the stock market yourself. You just wouldn't be able to have the access because you don't have the funds to do so. So that's one of the ways that we're able to reduce our cost and get you into higher performing funds. So it's just something to think of, is you don't need to remove your money as soon as you retire.
Basically the life lesson that I really took away from, being part of deferred comp for 30 years is I wish I would have participated on a regular basis. I was a regular contributor, but like when you get a cost of living raise or a step raise or a promotion, funnel off 20%, just reward yourself with a certain amount and put a certain amount away before it ever hits your bank account. And then that way, before you know it, you're maxed out. The coulda, woulda, shoulda is one of those things you kind of look back, but I'm grateful that I participated. So, but with that, back to you, Justin.
All right, so I had a short-term checklist and I made a long-term checklist of things that you want to do, that you might want to look at. This class was really designed to be interactive, and this isn't the forum that I would hope to be. I hope there was open conversation. So I hope that there's some questions that either text to Captain Cahill or anybody in the chat, if we want to open that up and have any questions that weren't covered, because I didn't want to just lecture you on finances. That's boring. All right, Mueller. Just to recap, members of the Deferred Comp Committee, hopefully I don't miss anybody. There's 9 of us. Myself, Trevor Jameson, Mitch Thomas, Kyle Santuccio, Nate Hofford, Sarah Ortiz in admin payroll, Jim Newcomers, retiree, and Randy Johnson and Troy Simonik. He's not retired, but he's close.
You want to read the question
Nothing.
and then answer it. It says up on the screen, can you do 401k rollovers into 457?
Yes, you can do 401k rollovers into your 457. Reach out. Nationwide has a form. They work with your previous employer on what paperwork each company, because they all have their own kind of rules and regulations, so internal rules and regulations. So they will send the form over to whatever company you have. So we have Leanne Lutches and Paul Menard. They're the 2 on the flyer from Nationwide. Alex, I'll send that to you, and yeah, they'll be able to do that for you. It's pretty simple. That's another thing. Metro Fire has a really good plan. We're very active in the plan in its management, but we have very high account balances in general compared to other private sector plans. So that's why we're able to get our fees really low. And so you'd be hard pressed to find a better managed plan with the funds that we have and the performance outside of us. So if you have money sitting somewhere else that's kind of just sitting there and you're not doing anything with it, it'd be a good idea if you have a 401k or a 457 from a previous employer to look into rolling it here, because I doubt that you'll beat the plan that we have.
That's it so far. Does anyone else have anything?
All right. With no other questions, I'm at 101. You guys can give us a call. Give me a call there.
All right. Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, Roger. Thanks to all the other presenters for sharing your information with us today. Thank you for all of you tuning in. We appreciate it. Hopefully you got something out of it. we'll see you in December with Chief Harms and the executive staff talking about where we're at in Metro Fire and where we're going. Have a good holiday season.